there does come a point in time you cannot swim back to the dock. And you got to look over there and go, this is it, right? This is the moment where I'm all in, right? And that's that surrender moment to the Lord where you're like, I can't just jump out and swim back. It's too far. I can't even see the shore anymore.
Welcome to the Wealth Builders Podcast. We're so grateful that you joined us this week. We call you the Wealth Builders family because that's what we're all about, is being a family. And speaking of family, I've got an amazing guest today, Jeff VanderWal. Jeff, thanks for joining us.
It's really my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You know, Jeff is an amazing leader. He is the founder and CEO of ClearShift. And he really has brought this business really from the ground level, Jeff, all the way up. He's won multiple awards. And if you're a leader that is looking for an entrepreneur, that you're thinking, hey, I want to grow my business and I just don't know what to look for or what direction to go, Jeff is going to answer a lot of that today. So Jeff, I'm so glad to have you. And I was just thinking maybe it'd be helpful if you just tell people a little bit about your company, about ClearShift, how you maybe started it, and some of where you are today.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, again, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. I love Wealth Builders and what God's doing there, and the parts you guys play in people's lives is really amazing. So to be here and be a part of it is awesome. So ClearShift means clear and transparent, shift in a new direction. When we started in the automotive industry, we wanted to be different. And so, as God's brought me through this journey in my life, I've learned a lot about how to run a kingdom business. It didn't start off that way, but it did start off to operate in excellence. And so we did start off small, kind of a buying company, turned into a leasing company. And then we ended up doing some pretty amazing things with some professional athletes and stuff, some closed lease things.
Wow.
Someday I'll explain all that to you, but really it got us on the map because we had come up with a really unique idea that nobody else had come up with. They're really short-term, like 9-month leases for athletes during the baseball season.
Wow.
So sold that, and that was kind of what parlayed into ClearShift. And so ClearShift went from a kind of a client-based private buying company into a forward-facing, consumer-centric business. So that's in 2017. Cool. So that's kind of how the maturation process happened. And we've had an incredible amount of increase over the years, but really the journey was learning how to handle success. And I was very, very flesh oriented. So for me to be able to transition when God really got a hold of me and I got turned on to the Lord, it was a really major change. And so a lot of things that I teach is through that transition.
That's really cool because that's really a story too. Like God knew where you were at. He knew what your future was.
Yeah.
And isn't it neat how he had you start things? Maybe you weren't where you are today with the Lord, but he got a hold of you.
Yes, it's true. Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thread that's in your life. And when you were mentioning that lease, today I was in business school and I've been talking about blue ocean strategy. Mm-hmm. So really what you're describing is like a blue ocean strategy. You are looking within the industry and you are doing things different that really kind of eliminates the competition. So tell me, how did you go about finding this strategy of the 9-month lease?
So it's actually a great question, and you nailed it. So I loved the automotive industry, but I hated how broken it was.
Yes.
So I don't think, you have to be in the business to know that's a pretty broken industry. So I wanted to do things different. And so through always looking at things through the entrepreneurial lenses, not even necessarily a kingdom lens, even though I believe entrepreneurialism is kingdom minded, it's creation and it's learning and it's growing. For me was trying to understand in this business, how can we have blue ocean ideas inside of a red ocean? And really that's what
it is a red ocean. Yeah.
100%, right? So when we came up with this idea, we just realized this is a part of the market that nobody's serving. And so
awesome.
The hardest challenge I started that when I was 25. So I'd get laughed out of the room a bit because we're talking to these really big players and they're like, who are, not literal players, but like agents and executives at the automotive companies. Yeah. So as we kind of pushed through that though, and had a really good idea, it was extremely profitable. And so my encouragement is if you're passionate about an industry, you ask the Holy Spirit to show you like little gold veins that you can really capitalize because they're in there. They're there all the time. It's just people don't have the eyes to see them.
That's so true. That's so in line. I feel like I've been really teaching on this the last couple of days. I feel like you are connecting with something because it's following that passion. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that we need to pay attention to, because what we're passionate about, most people, if I could just say, are not passionate about the automotive industry, right?
Yep.
So the fact that you are is something that the Lord put in, and then finding that way to find that gap, that niche in the market. And how did you, by the way, at the age of 25, finally win over all these agents and these people in the room with this?
Yeah, so I've always been able to communicate pretty well, right? So I'd go in there and I'd do my thing. Really what it was, Karen, was understanding with excellence. Once they realized this person really knows, this guy knows what he's talking about, even at a depth that we maybe don't know. And so I think the proof was in the pudding at a certain point. If you're an expert in something and you're operating in excellence, it's just a matter of time until people start to see that. And what's really interesting about how I started off in automotive was I loved the automotive industry. I was really good at it. Mm-hmm. But I think what really changed for me was when the Lord really got a hold of me, I loved people more than I loved the automotive industry. So when I was able to put those together, really what I learned was I love people. I love the people side of serving it, as opposed to just, the transactional.
Cars
and so, you've even talked about, like, you can get emotional about a house, right?
So, weirdly emotional about a house, right?
It's like, it's really more of a kingdom impact, what the people are involved. So it's both and I think that's where it doesn't have to be automotive, be any industry that you're in. If you're passionate about the industry, God uniquely created you that way, but he's looking to put the kingdom element into it and further the kingdom of God inside of that. So that's really where the leadership part comes in. That's where the entrepreneurial spirit comes in, and to be able to see something and have the faith and courage to really trailblaze something, even though, man, nobody's gone down this path before, but we can do it. Now, to give you a 1 minute little example. So we had these 5 different cars that guys could lease. And what they did it for was typically for their wives, right? Because they'd be playing in Pittsburgh, but they live in LA, and they had to have cars all over the place. And so I could tell it was a huge issue for everybody to figure out what they're going to do with all these cars. So they're renting cars for obscene amount of money.
Wow.
So anyway, we found this little niche, but what I realized through that process is like we can find this niche and this need inside of this that's extraordinarily profitable, and the value we brought to it was so significant that they were falling over themselves to get aligned with us. And so when the Lord gives you a vision there, Mercedes-Benz and BMW, they laughed people out there, we'll never do that, right? But so it opened the door for us to do it in this little microfinance private lease. So anyway, that's the quick story about it.
That's really cool. And this isn't a training on the BMGC, although we've talked about it, but really you really identified your customer segment. And it's important to know who you're not going to serve as much as who you are going to serve. And you're right about just seeing, like, the families. You know what? This chaos is gone from their family. They've got their vehicles and it's in place. They don't have to deal with the rental agencies. And that's a huge blessing. And that's how it is about houses too. When I'm in there designing or whatever I'm doing, I'm just imagining someone walking in and they're just like blessed by it, right? So I really like how you tapped into that. And the other part of people is your employees. Mm-hmm. And so you had to travel a little bit down a journey to shift this thinking. I wasn't trying to but I just did.
Yeah, it's fine.
Because it was really moving from the typical maybe automotive industry element to like, wow, God, I need to do things different. How did you bring people along in that process?
So it's a great question, because when we started off, it was very much a gunslinger mentality. We kind of had like a controller and some office staff and then a couple of front people. And, we've grown that to, that was really ended in the mid 2014 maybe. So from that point to where we got to in 2017 to where we are today in 2024, we've had just exponential growth of people. And so, so for me, getting people to operate in excellence, they benefited from that. It was a good thing for them. It was good transactionally. And I think that's a good, healthy work environment. But I think the biggest challenge for me, if I'm just being transparent, was understanding how to lead people, as opposed to just like, hey, throw everything on my back and everyone just follow me. And that works to an extent. and to a size. But if you're really trying to scale your business, or even if you're not even trying to scale your business, if your business is outpacing what you can do and you're starting to bring people on, and you have to start building a plan, an action plan, which I didn't, right? I was just like, we're going to figure this out as we go. We were building the plane in the air a little bit. And there's certain things I'd have gone back and said, I would have liked to understand this better, especially with people, but really fostering people and turning them into the best that they can be. We always say, be you inside of us, right? So we're going to set up the parameters of how we operate, but I want your special uniqueness inside of that in your department. So I think
that's so good.
That was a real fundamental change from doing business like person to person to doing business in the sense of leading people to transact. That was a really long journey. I'm still on that journey.
It never ends.
It does not. But it's just new seasons. It's bigger. It's bigger responsibilities. It's larger budgets. It's more people. And what's great about that is that's also the impact grows. And so you can see the kingdom multiplication in that, and stewarding it at the beginning the right way. So when God does bring you to that place, that He's bringing you on that journey, that you're ready for the increase.
Boy, that's so good. And we were visiting a little bit before we started because I was really curious about, wow, you've grown that company so much. And in that, there's things and decision points and changes that you need to make. So I wondered if you could maybe share with us, what are some of the indicators in a company that kind of says, hey, I've got to make a change here to go to the next level? What does that feel like? And what do you watch for as a CEO?
Yeah, it's great. So multiple things, but one thing I would say from a heart standpoint, when the Lord's, says, the Bible says, delight yourself in the Lord and He'll give you the desires of your heart. So when you're walking with the Lord and your desires are changing from, hey, I believe that there's more than just this, right?
Yes.
There's this, not that you're ungrateful, but just by any means, but like, hey, it's time to grow. This is a God thing. This is a good thing. The first thing is you got to get that, like Mary treasured these things and put it in her heart, right? You have to get those things in your heart and start stewing on those things and chewing on those things and meditating on those things, because ultimately that solidifying in your heart where God's calling you to go next, that's the faith pillar that you're going to wrap around for when the winds start blowing, that you can say, nope, God called me to do this and I'm moving forward in it. Because it's going to take faith to get there, ultimately where God's calling you.
Right.
And so I think it starts with your personal walk with the Lord, to be able to say, Lord, I know you're calling me to this in my heart. I have a desire for this. And so we're going to start moving in a direction of increase. And once you're convinced of that, then there's no going back, right? So that's step one. That's getting off the dock into the boat. Then you're taking your boat out into the wild blue yonder, into the ocean, so to speak. And there's a season where you can still, I'm speaking prophetically a little bit, so I hope this goes with you, if people understand what I'm saying. There's a point in time where you can still jump out of the boat and you can swim back to shore, right? Yes. There's always this part of your journey where you're like, I can still see the shore, I can still see the dock, I'm out here, God's calling me.
Yes.
And it's not a fear thing, but it's just a safety thing. Right?
That's so good.
There does come a point in time where you cannot swim back to the dock. And you got to look over there and go, this is it, right? This is the moment where I'm all in, right? And that's that surrender moment to the Lord where you're like, I can't just jump out and swim back. It's too far. I can't even see the shore anymore. And that's this all in part where, you've grown through that process. You've stewarded that process. You've gone from, kind of that technician doer to like that, kind of manager. And now you're leading something, you're growing something. There's other people in the boat, by the way. And you're like, we're not going back. That's a major moment in your life. And when that moment happens, most businesses that have gotten to that point know that they're all in, business or ministry. I'm all in now. And that's a fun place to be. It's in the natural, it's a little bit like nervous place to be.
Yeah.
But that's where you're like, okay, am I worried about the shore or am I worried about going where God's calling me to go? So I know those are high level and I didn't really get into the nuts and bolts of that, but does that make sense?
It totally does. And when you're talking, it's almost like, and this would be encouraging for those of you that are maybe trying to grow your business or thinking about growing, and maybe you've hit that point, but it almost sounds to me like when you hit that, it's almost like breaking through the sound barrier.
100%.
And so I'll just ask you, like, if we're moving through and we're trying to grow, it feels like a struggle. If we keep going, does it feel like that all once you break through, and is it much more peaceful then?
Yes. So there's always going to be new seasons that God's calling to. Both of us, respect Andrew Womack so much, the journey that he's on, right? He's just such a father of the faith, both of us. But I'm looking at what Andrew's pushed. Like Andrew's got this major vision, and him alone sitting under his teaching has pushed me in my company, in my faith, because I'm like, Lord, you are no respecter of persons. If you'll do it for him, you can do it for me. Different applications, but different callings, but same God, same purpose, right? So I'm like, okay, well then I'm moving forward. And so getting around people of faith that encourage you, having relationships with people that are also pushing you to the next level and are walking with the Lord is super critical. You don't have to be best friends with everybody, but you do need to have some people that are encouraging. But to your point exactly about, breaking the sound barrier, we both heard that analogy. It is true that you think the bolts are going to fall out of the cockpit. You're just like, it's shaking. And I've had times with my leadership teams where I'm like, we either need to chop the wheels off the wagon and float this thing back across the river and regroup. Yeah. Or we need to just hammer the throttle down. Wow. And I've been there multiple times. And that is where you need to be able to have that quiet place, that soft, quiet, still cleft of the rock with the Lord, to sit in there and say, Lord, I know I have a green light to move forward. I don't see how it's going to happen. I don't see where the resources are going to come from. I don't see how it's going to go, but I trust you enough now. And you, this is powerful, and you can trust me enough to keep moving forward. That's so good. Because it's not like, I think it's not easy, but we can all say, I trust God. But, a friend of mine asked me a while ago, like, can God trust you? That is a great question, Jeff. Yes. I've never thought of that. Yeah, I hadn't either. So I don't want to take credit for it. He said it to me, and I'm like, it was just such a great word for me at that time. He was speaking prophetically over me. He said, God can trust you to be able to go where you need to go. And so it was so powerful for me, because oftentimes for me, I'm like, I do trust him, but trust is earned, not earned like works, but earned like year over year, week over week, month over month, as you continue to go through this. It doesn't mean you're perfect, but it does mean like I'm fully committed to the vision that God's given me, and I'm willing to move forward. And when you and him can walk in a place where it's like, I trust you, you trust me, we're moving forward. Now, if the Lord says stop, we need to have ears to stop, right? Because it's not always just gas down, right? But most of the time, it is. And God's kind of waiting on us. Would you agree with that? Totally. We think we're waiting on God, and then it's like, no, he's like way out there. Yeah. So I can just say I've been there, and some of your listeners that are at that place right now, where they're like, Lord, do I quit right now? Like, do I stop? Like, what do I do? You need to be walking with the Lord to know what the next step is. But oftentimes, and this will help, and this has helped me a lot, is has he said something different? No. Then keep moving to what the last thing he told you. So helpful. Just keep moving forward. Like, he gave you a word and he hasn't given you another word, just keep moving forward. And so he's so faithful. He's gentle and he's kind, and he'll come put his arm around you and let you know, like, you're doing fine. Like, you might get off the trail here and there, but like at the end of the day, we're moving in a direction. Sometimes it's just we're going north, right? Like, or just one step, and it's been his word's been so comforting to me, and just that, I want to see everything, because I'm a planner, I'm a goer, I'm a getter. But at the same time, he's like, listen, I need you in faith. So I'm not going to show you everything. I'm just going to show you the next step. So good. And he works on our behalf. He highlights us. He opens doors. He does things. I mean, he is such a good God, and he's so he wants to walk with us in the cool of the day, even in the automotive business, right? Yes. He cares deeply about us and the people that we're impacting. So that would be my encouragement. Don't give up. Don't quit. Do not quit. Keep moving forward until God clearly shows you. I don't know if you're in this teaching, but Barry Bennett, he was talking about I can't remember the psalm right now, but he says, the Lord will bring me into a broad place. And he showed this giant meadow. I don't know if you saw that or not. I did not see that. It was so powerful. I'll send it to you. But anyway, I put it up for your listeners. But it's like this, he showed this giant open mountain or mountain valley. He's like, this is where the Lord's leading you. It's not like you're going to miss it. Like, God's will is like some tightrope that if you don't exactly walk down this tightrope just the way, right? He's like, the Lord will lead you into a broad place. Like, you want to go by the trees, go by the trees. You want to go down by the lake, go down by the lake. You want to go by the river. This is all this is the broad place that I've brought you. And so sometimes you need to take the pressure off of, I feel like I'm going to miss it. You're not going to miss what God's calling you to do. You just need to continue to move forward and what the doors he's opening.
Jeff, this is so encouraging because I think we all do want to do exactly what God wants us to do. And I like that. That was a really good visual to share because, God is a big God. He will get us back on track. But it seems to me, most people, maybe we get in fear. We don't know for sure if God's called us to do this, but I like how you just brought clarity. Is this the last thing that he said? Just keep going. Yep. And he can move a ship that's moving, correct, right? He can steer 100%. That. Wow, that is so good. So Jeff, as you look back, and you look at those times where you had to make those adjustments that the Lord was showing you, like, hey, this is where we're going to go next. When you had to, and when you have to deal with people, like maybe sometimes someone's not a good fit anymore. I think as Christians, it's hard for us to kind of wrap our heads around how does this Christian walk, couple with holding people accountable or having the right people on your team. Can you give us some advice with how to handle that?
Yeah, there's a couple layers there. I think one is, as Christians and as we're stewarding our business, having the cones in which we operate inside of, like, this is how we operate, and letting people be themselves kind of in that, but they do need to get their jobs done and they need to hit the goal. And it's when it's clearly laid out, like, this is the job and this is the goal, and they hit it, celebrate that and give them an opportunity to be promoted. If you operate in excellence, no matter what you do, it's impossible to get overlooked. It's impossible. Like, you can't operate inside of a business really well and get overlooked. It may take time. Not everybody may see it, but really good. You will be highlighted. I think that's number one for people that are, serving somebody else's vision. But when people are, we call them noble failures. I think it's Dean Radke that calls them noble failures and chronic failures, right? If somebody's chronically failing at something, a noble failure is I did the wrong thing for the right reason. I made a judgment.
I like that.
But it wasn't the right judgment call, but I get your heart and I understand that, right?
Yeah.
And we actually celebrate those. We correct them, but we celebrate them. The chronic failure is you continue to do the wrong thing for the wrong reasons with the wrong heart, right? And so those need to be corrected. And we put them on PIPs, which is performance improvement plans. And then ultimately, if it's time to separate, there's two things. One, if somebody's a great employee, however, it's a bad fit, it's just not working anymore, and God's doing something there, they need to move on. As faith people, as Christians, we need to believe that God's got something better for them than even what they have here. So it's faith, and sometimes you're the one that has to explain to them, like, listen, I understand you can't see it right now, but God's got something better for you. Let's get you into a place where you can go there. And they may not like it. They may not even believe it.
Right.
But if it's not a good fit with you, then God's gonna have something better for them and an open door, right?
Yes,
doesn't mean treat them right. You do what you need to do. To be godly in that separation. But other times you're going to need to fire people that are not doing the right thing. And that doesn't have to be mean. It just needs to be factual.
Yeah, it's not a personal thing, right?
No, because you're stewarding, right? So you have to steward the business that God's given you. And sometimes that is having to have those tough conversations.
Yeah.
I'll say this, the last thing I'll say about it too is the hardest things are the times when you can't see it clearly. Not even employees, but oftentimes with employees, but with the business as a whole. When I'm looking at something that is seemingly impossible in the natural, I'm looking at a mountain, so to speak, and I'm like, I can't solve this problem. I can't figure this whole thing out. Or even if I'm in fear about it, right?
Right.
What I'll typically do is step back and go, well, I can't do that right now. I don't have enough faith to do that. But what do I have faith to do? And sometimes it's just one small little baby step, and then that baby step leads to another baby step, and before you know it, you can't go back. You're
out there. We can't swim to shore.
And then you have to do it, and it'll push you to do it, right? And then through that you'll grow, because you may not even do it right all the way. But I got out, I walked, I did it, and I did some things really well. I would do some things different the next time. but that's how you grow your faith and your understanding at the same time.
That is so good. My gosh, this has been amazing. And we have just like a minute to go. So I want to make sure everybody knows how to connect with you. So first of all, Jeff is going to be he's going to be speaking at our Wealth Builders Conference. And so you don't want to miss this. It's the 10-year anniversary. Isn't that awesome? And so get registered for that at wealthbuilders.org/events. Also, we've got a free mini book that we want to offer you today. You can get this free download, and it's called the Leader Manager. And Jeff actually just taught this. This is Billy's book, but he taught this at the Next Level Conference. So if you want this free download, you can go to wealthbuilders.org/leader manager. So Jeff, I'm sure a lot of people are really intrigued by your business. Do you have a website that you can give people on how to connect with you?
Absolutely. So a couple different things. On the ministry side, we have Built for Purpose podcast. We're relaunching that at the beginning of the year with a bunch of really cool new stuff. So we're super excited about that. We have some great content. Miss Karen is on one of our earlier episodes, which was amazing.
So fun.
So Built for Purpose podcast, you can find that at basically any streaming service.
Right.
Clearshift.com. Clearshift.com is our website. It's a great place to go and kind of see what we're all about. So if anybody wants to check that out.
Hey, check that out. Check out the podcast. I'm so glad you're relaunching it. It's so good.
Thank you.
All right. So any final thoughts that you want to share with people, Jeff?
It's so good. Again, thank you so much for having me. I love Wealth Builders, and what you guys are doing. 10 years is so awesome. It's amazing.
So
The Leader Manager is an amazing book. If you can get your hands on that, it's awesome. And thank you guys so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. And thanks all of you, our wonderful Wealth Builders family. We're just so grateful for you. And remember to share this podcast with people that are really looking to build wealth based on the kingdom of God. I really feel like Billy and Becky, their call with this is just like no one else's, So if you're hearing that sound of in the spirit, or if you know people that are, connect them to this podcast. Thanks again. God bless you and have an amazing rest of the day.